Ryan Reynolds here from Mint Mobile. With the price of just about everything going up during inflation, we thought we'd bring our prices down. So to help us, we brought in a reverse auctioneer, which is apparently a thing.
Mint Mobile Unlimited Premium Wireless. How to get 30, 30, bit to get 30, bit to get 20, 20, 20, bit to get 20, 20, bit to get 15, 15, 15, 15, just $15 a month? Sold!
Give it a try at mintmobile.com/switch.
$45 up front for 3 months plus taxes and fees. Promo rate for new customers for limited time. Unlimited more than 40 gigabytes per month. Slows full terms at mintmobile.com.
Hi, I'm Dr. Lori Watson and the co-host of Foreplay.
I'm your co-host, George Fowler, former firefighter, your couples therapist who loves to talk about sex.
Woo! Let's discuss everything about the best sexual techniques to building your emotional intimacy, which is really necessary for great sex.
We bring sound, concrete tools to reframe your relationship problems and learn how to fall in love again and feel desire.
Listen to Foreplay Radio on the iHeart app, on Apple Podcasts, or wherever you get your podcasts.
Hey everybody, thank you for listening to Marriage Therapy Radio. I'm Zach. I'm here with Laura. If you've listened to the podcast and or been married for any length of time, you may have heard the old kind of thing about how sometimes wives or moms feel like they have 3 children, including their husband. That was definitely me, especially when my kids were younger. Now that my girls are older, I will sometimes joke that I feel like I have 3 wives. And one thing I know for sure is I want all 3 of them to feel empowered. And today we're talking to Laura Doyle, who wrote a book called The Empowered Wife. I have fun because I have to say Laura Doyle or Laura Heck throughout the podcast. A little bit later in the podcast, the internet gods kick me off, and the 2 Lauras talk on their own. You and I will be finding out in real time what I missed. But other than that, it's a very cool conversation. Stick around. Okay, Laura Doyle, we're here to talk to you because you sent us a copy of the book called The Empowered Wife. But I want to ask you a question first because I want to know if we're safe. You wrote a book called First Kill All the Marriage Counselors. And are we in jeopardy here today?
Because we are marriage therapists.
Right. I mean, well, as long as you're impervious to like poison darts or
Dementors,
then you should be Dementors. Yeah. Everything should be fine.
Yeah.
It's going to be a lively conversation.
Tell me about what is that for you? I actually didn't read that book, so I'm not sure what you mean, but let's hear what you got.
So First Kill All the Marriage Counselors is the original name of the book that I sent you, The Empowered Wife. And I just thought it was a funny joke. I thought it was hilarious, right? And but my target audience did not find it as amusing as I did, except for in Australia, they loved it. So I somehow had a nerve there. So my publisher actually agreed that we would change the name, and we did. And the sales.
So I did read that book.
More than doubled. You did read the book.
Yeah. Oh, so did I. That's so great.
Yeah, you read it. Yeah,
look at that.
So now you know.
It's clever. I dig it, and I think it's an interesting concept. Why did you gravitate toward that notion in the first place?
Of killing the marriage counselors?
Yeah. I mean, I'm fixated on it a little bit. I mean, why wouldn't I be? You look like a pleasant enough lady, but
it comes from when I started by ruining my own marriage, right? I met my husband, thought he was amazing. And then like 7, 8, 9 years later, we were just totally in the ditch. And we spent about a year in marriage counseling ourselves, and we spent about $9,000 on marriage counseling. Mm-hmm. And I remember being on the counselor's gray couch when I thought, wow, this is it's hopeless. I'm either going to have to get divorced because he's never going to change, or I'm going to have to spend the rest of my life in a loveless marriage. Those were my options. And that's after we'd spent all that time in marriage counseling. And I thought, well, it must just be us, mostly him, really, is the problem. And because I had dragged him to marriage counseling thinking like the counselor can fix him and then I will finally be happy, because that's how it works. I'm pretty sure.
Yeah.
And of course it didn't work. It never works that way. And so I made that decision right there. Like, I'm going to have to get divorced. But the problem was I was too embarrassed to get divorced because people had been to the wedding just not that many years before. So I decided as a last ditch effort, I was going to ask women who had been married for what seemed like an eternity, which is 15 years, what their secrets were. And I thought they were going to say, well, you got to pick the right guy to start with. But they didn't say that. They said
the compatibility myth, maybe.
Yeah. Right. And that's what I was thinking. Like, we're just incompatible. Like, he showed no interest he didn't want to talk to me. He just wanted to watch reruns. He didn't even want to make love to me. So it was really lonely. It was very painful. We did a lot of big fights, big blow-ups, especially in the car. And so our house was either like wall-to-wall hostility or else we were having a Cold War. where there's no talking, right, for days, and it's just tense and stiff and so I started asking these women for their secrets, and they said things that were crazy that didn't make any sense to me. And I remember thinking, well, I'll just try them. If it works, great. If not, I'll throw it out. And so I did. I started experimenting with some of their nutty ideas. And it was not that long afterwards that I came through the door and my husband's face lit up.
Huh.
He was happy to see me again.
Yeah.
And that had been gone. So
I want you to talk about that, but let me just see if I can get the math straight a little bit. So you got married, and then about 9 years later, it wasn't what you signed up for. So you went to therapy. That was not a helpful experience to you. For some reason, we don't know anything about that therapist, but somehow you left feeling less helped kind of than you hoped. Then you decided to ask people who'd been married forever. That's 15 years.
Ever. Ever.
So I think I'm at 23, maybe 24. I think I do 24 this year. And you're what now? You're
31.
Does 31, does 15 still feel like forever for you?
No. No. It feels like nothing. Because now I have the relationship I dreamed I would have when I stood at the altar and said, I do. You know, he's we have a lot of fun together. We laugh. He makes bedroom eyes at me again. And I'll just be walking down the hall and he'll just kind of grab me by the waist and give me a kiss. And
that's
so cool. Now,
Laura,
this is my soft place to land now. What?
Laura Heck, are you at 15 years yet?
Yeah.
So you're an expert now.
I am an expert. I'm 11 years married, 15 years, 16 years together.
Okay, wait, Laura Doyle, I have to say last names all the time. I want to hear one more thing before we go in. What do you think why did you say especially in the car? What was unique about the car that you guys had?
We were just stuck in the car together, I think. I mean, it was like we couldn't escape, right? There was no relief valve to get out of the car when you're on the freeway. Yeah. In fact, we were on our way to Disneyland, the happiest place on earth.
Yeah.
When he said, fine, we'll go to marriage counseling. And I was like, I'm going to let him have the last word on this one. So I'm not sure by the car, but it was interesting because I remember once I learned some of these things, like what to do differently, I learned that, I have a lot more power in my marriage than I actually realized, a lot more influence. I thought, okay, good. Now we'll stop fighting because now I know what to do. And I remember it was like not that long afterwards that we had another big blow up in the car. And I thought, that's really like Dementor style hope crushing, because I thought that wasn't going to happen anymore because I knew what to do, but I couldn't always get myself to do what I knew to do. Just knowing is not enough. Right. So that's when I decided I'm going to recruit some friends and I'm going to make them do this with me. So I'll stop controlling my husband. I'll start controlling my friends. And that worked.
There you go.
Yeah. So
I did learn though. I learned in elementary school from G.I. Joe that knowing is half the battle. Did you know this?
No, but I learned from
Joe. Now I know knowing is half the battle.
No, I mean, I feel like you can just learn everything you need to from like G.I. Joe and like Spider-Man, right? With great power comes
Talking
great
about Spider-Man.
Yes.
With great power comes
you are speaking Zach language right now.
That was such a big insight for my marriage. Like I have kind of a responsibility to, I feel like I do now, to practice the skills that contribute to intimacy. And I feel like women, since we are the keepers of the relationship, right? Women run the game, and we have that responsibility because we have enormous power that adage, if mama's not happy, nobody's happy, right? Or happy wife, happy life.
Right.
That's on us. That's on us.
I had a client once. This woman was married to a guy named Gus, and the phrase in their house was "Happy Gus, happy us." It was the opposite.
So, Laura, what do you mean by keepers? Women are the keepers of the relationship.
Well, comparative religious studies student gave me this metaphor years ago, and I just love it. He was talking about so yin and yang, right? So you could say masculine, feminine, yin and yang, whatever. And he said every object has yin and yang. And like a coffee cup, for example, the ceramic part is the yang, the part that gives it structure, like the handle and whatever. And he said the yin is the part where it can receive coffee. And if you think about a coffee cup that can't receive coffee, it doesn't have any purpose. And so as women, we are built to receive. That's like our bodies. It's a metaphor for the
Sure.
the way the relationship. Let's say the yin and the yang. And of course, there's always exceptions to things, right? But this is something that I see as pretty universal. Now that I've worked with students from all over the planet, and Japan and Egypt and everywhere else, we see that this is like something that we have in common is, as a woman, I want to feel adored. I want to feel special. I want to feel taken care of. And my husband really has a burning desire to make me happy as long as I'm pleasable, right? So if I stop this system where I'm like, no more coffee, right? In the coffee cup, like he loses his purpose. So, and it can manifest in ways like my husband used to say like, oh, we'd wake up in the morning. He'd go, oh, you're so beautiful. And I'd be like, no, stop it. Like my hair's dirty and I'm not even wearing makeup, whatever. Like I would turn it down. Right. So very poor receiving. And, he's losing out on the opportunity to make me feel good. Right. He wants to give me a compliment and I'm not willing to receive. So I'm kind of stopping that positive flow. And so compliments is one example, but it's everything. It's receiving help. It's receiving gifts, right? Oh no, you shouldn't have, or, flowers just are expensive and they die, or, I don't need them, or, right? And special treatment, right? Let me go get the car. It's raining, right? That if I'm not willing to receive, then I interrupt the virtuous cycle of him knowing he made his wife happy and me feeling special, desired, and taken care of.
That's pretty cool. Yeah. I didn't mean to interrupt you. I did, but I didn't, I wasn't successful, but it's like also, receiving an apology, right? Like I'll say often enough, like there's an art to delivering a compliment. Yeah. There's also an art to receiving one. And I think that's spot on in terms of if you're tapping into that, like, I'll speak as a man for a second. If I give you a compliment or I give my wife a compliment and she goes, no, it's not too long before I stop giving them to her.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah,
that's right.
And that's maybe what you mean by the virtuous cycle, I guess.
Yes.
Because it reinforces itself in both directions, right? Both toward the positive and the negative. Yeah,
that's exactly right. And you didn't get, I mean, when you think about giving a gift to somebody too, right? Like you think, oh, they're going to love this, and you're excited to give it to them. And if you give it to them and they go, oh no, you didn't have to get me this or whatever, that's not as gratifying as if they go, how did you know? This is exactly, I'm going to use this. I love it. Mm-hmm. Or even just, thank you for thinking of me, right? There's a whole world of ways you can receive a gift, even if it's not exactly what you imagined it should be, right? Which I think can happen pretty frequently in marriage, right? I remember I had one student who was like, yeah, my husband bought me a Swiss Army knife. And I was like, what? For Valentine's Day or something, right? And she was like,
better than a vacuum cleaner.
Yeah, right. It's better than a vacuum cleaner. It was interesting. She said that at first she wasn't as excited about it, but she said after a while, it became like her favorite thing. She actually used it a lot. And she was, it's just kind of a lesson in how if you want the perfect gift, you could just go to Amazon and buy it, right? But if marriage is about expanding your horizons and just having someone see a different side of you and maybe offering something they think will contribute to you that you didn't see for yourself.
Yeah.
Zach and I are huge fans of getting support, especially during abnormally stressful times like these. This is why we have partnered with BetterHelp to put you in contact with licensed professional counselors in your area. Tap into the world's largest network of licensed, accredited, and experienced counselors who can help you with a range of issues, including depression, anxiety, relationships, trauma, grief, and more. With BetterHelp's counselors, you get the same professionalism and quality that you would expect from an in-office counselor, but with the ability to communicate when and how you want. The matching process is quick but thorough, and you have the ability to communicate with your therapist how you like it, whether it be messaging, over the phone, or video conferencing. I know that in-person therapy sessions aren't feasible right now, and a lot of therapists are booked out, but don't let that stop you from getting the support that you need. The cost is less than half of what Zach and I charge, which is kind of unheard of. And when you register with BetterHelp, you're supporting Marriage Therapy Radio. Go to trybetterhelp.com/MTR to register. Try TRY better BETTER help. HELP.com/MTR to register with BetterHelp.
I I have a question for you, Laura, because we recorded a podcast right before this, and I have been reading your book. And so obviously, like, I have things I want to talk and tease out. And now that I have you, it's like such a pleasure to have the author be able to explain something in the book where I was like, wait, what does she mean by this? What does this mean? So I told Zach, I generally will have these intentions that I ask my clients to focus on for the next week or two. And it's all about how they can control their part of the relationship. What is it that you have control over? Which is ultimately what I think you're giving women, is this empowerment of feeling less hopeless and more hopeful, that they have things that they have control over in how it impacts their relationship and how their partner will respond to them. And correct me if I'm wrong, but that's kind of my grasp, which aligns a lot with sort of my thought as a couples therapist, is I'm doing individual therapy simultaneously. Your focus is on this, your focus is on this. When you can focus on yourself and what you're bringing to the table, the relationship will get exponentially better. Yeah. So the question that I had for you is around this idea of requesting and making a request so open-ended that your partner can sort of show up for your desires how they want to. So I kind of feel like we have these close-ended questions where we're very specific about, here's what I need, here's how I want you to do it. And it becomes almost like a demand. Mm-hmm. And you talk about making your desires known to your partner, but then also kind of like stepping back and allowing them to, what's the language? I wrote it down because I took a lot of...
Express your desires in a way that
inspires.
Yes, so much more effective.
Right. So can you explain that to our listeners of what that means?
Yeah. I mean, I think for me, one of the main things I was doing wrong in life was I didn't know how to do this. And I thought that in order to avoid conflict, you should just kind of suck it up sometimes and like do what your partner wants, you know? So that, I mean, that's a problem. But yeah, I remember there's an embarrassing story about being in Hawaii and going to see a volcano and then like losing my mind because I'm like, you didn't even ask what I wanted to do. I wanted to go to the beach and you think this would be fun? I don't think this is fun. I think it's stupid. You know, so it's like, you saw a volcano, all right, you know, but and it's because poor, you know, younger version of myself just didn't know how to express what I wanted. Mm-hmm. And then it came out too, like I would say like, and I thought I was saying what I wanted. I'd say, John, this kitchen is a disaster. And I thought he was going to like turn off the TV, jump off the couch and like start cleaning the kitchen. And that didn't happen. So
that didn't inspire.
That's not the way to get me to clean the kitchen.
No, right. It doesn't, he didn't even know what I wanted. I thought I was saying what I wanted, but I totally wasn't saying it. So he probably just could hear John, you know, blah, 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 or whatever. I think men can't even, I think maybe no one can hear you when you're complaining, right? I was just complaining. So finally I learned that because he really does want to make me happy. And that was kind of hard to believe at first too. That if I would just say the final outcome of what I wanted, like the guy would bust himself trying to get it for me. So finally one day I said, you know, I would love a clean kitchen. And the kitchen was in the same condition as when I was saying it was a disaster, right? I would love a clean kitchen. He goes, okay. He goes, I'll clean it. And he did. And then that was 20 years ago and he's been doing it ever since. So something really shifted. Yeah, I never do the dishes. Like honestly.
Okay, I have a question for you because I've tried this and I have a real problem. Like I can already see my resistance. So I say to my husband, I would just really love a clean kitchen and full like clothing that would fold itself and end up, you know, put away. And my husband's response to that is great. Let's hire someone. Let's hire somebody to come in and clean the kitchen. And this has been his response really early on in our life when we really could not rub two pennies together. Right. And so I didn't see that as even a possibility. So what do you do when the solution that your husband comes up with is something that is still something you're not really willing to yield on?
Well, I love that question because I think there are a lot of pitfalls to this expressing your desires, right? And I think a lot of women try and think, well, it's not working. I don't think he cares because he's not doing what I want. Mm-hmm. Or yours where it's like, yeah, that's not going to work, buddy, because we are broke, right? I don't know if you've seen it. And we were broke at first too. So I remember those days and how hard it was and how stressful, especially I felt like I was doing everything, all the cleaning and he was doing nothing. And that was a big source of conflict. So a couple things. So one is at that time in my marriage, I was also controlling all the money because I thought, well, there's no way he's going to do it right. Like there's a lot of juggling here, people, and you got to like use coupons and right. And so it's actually a big relief for me, but very scary to just give that up and just be like, you know what, this is too stressful. It's causing me a lot of stress, and I can't really handle our finances anymore. So how about, if you do it? And he started doing it, and things got a lot better for us. It was really interesting because then his suggestions about spending money, like he was where the rubber met the road. Like he got like, oh yeah, we can't afford a house cleaner, so we can't do that. So I'll do it. Or he would like figure out a way that we could afford the house cleaner. And it wasn't on me. I was just like still expressing those desires. But there's another thing too. And that is like, sometimes I will express a desire and my husband will come up with a solution and it's still not quite what I want. And that just means it's incumbent on me to figure out what is the next part of that desire. Like if my husband said, hey, let's hire someone to come in and do the dishes, I might be like, yeah, well, I really I would love to have a clean kitchen every day. And I also really love our privacy where it's just the two of us here every day. Right. So I'm still just saying what I want, not complaining, but I'm just giving him more information. So like the puzzle gets a little more in focus for him to solve. And it's just kind of amazing how when I stick to that, instead of saying, we can't afford that, right? Or like, you're being unrealistic, like I used to say, kind of harsh criticism coming back. Like the man he is also empowered. He has also changed because he sees a possibility where he really can solve these problems and make his wife happy.
Yeah. Huh. Zach, thoughts, questions?
Well, I have a couple. My brain is attached to something you said a little bit earlier, as it does. One of the, I wouldn't call it a problem, but resistances that I had when reading through your book and is this idea that sometimes you'll tap into about all women or all men.
Yeah.
And you said something a little bit earlier that made me go, wait, how does that happen? And it's fascinating to me in this way, which is you have clients, I guess, all over the planet, including Egypt. In Egypt, are you talking to Egyptian women and are you learning about something unique about specific, cultures or individuals that maybe deviates from or reinforces even the norm? Because I will automatically reject the notion of all, right?
Yeah,
I just, because as a therapist, I don't talk to all women. I talk to that woman and that man.
Absolutely.
So tell me a little bit about what that is or how to make sense of that or embrace
it's funny.
that.
I remember actually I got an email from Egypt many years ago, probably 20 years ago. And she said, gosh, I got your book. It ended up being, my first book was published in 19 languages in 30 countries. And she said, and her exact comment was, we thought only Egyptian men were like this. So she was amazed to find out like that, an American woman was writing in a way that just seemed so to resonate with her experience. And then I like the Japanese women would say the same. So one of our jokes is like, gosh, we all married the same man, and it's like, if it's a small world after all starts playing, it's because I do think there's a lot we have in common in terms of, I think like the mama bear gene, right? Like women, as the one who bears the children, and we get very protective of kids, and we kind of, it's very common for women to want their husbands to not be so harsh with the kids, right? Or to help them discipline the kids, right? One or the other. So, the same challenges seem to come up again and again. And of course, every woman's got a different story, and every husband's got a different story. And everyone does not fit into these nice little boxes, right? When I'm saying all men and all women, of course, we're excluding people. And that's not the intention. The intention, though, is to say there are so many things that seem to be universal. Like, I talk about the power of the spouse-fulfilling prophecy, for example. And this is
spouse-fulfilling prophecy? Okay.
Right. So a spouse-fulfilling prophecy, we all have them. And sometimes they're unwitting, and other times you're more thoughtful about them, more direct. So, for example, I had been saying early in my marriage, one of my complaints was my husband needed to be more ambitious. He was not making enough money. And so I would say things like, maybe you could ask for a raise, or how about if you try to get a promotion or a better job or whatever. And what he heard, of course, was you don't make enough money. And I'm such a powerful manifester that my husband stopped making any money. It's just how
look at how powerful you are,
right? And not just me, but all of us. But right, yeah, I'm so powerful. So he quit his job, and I was seething with resentment because now I was the only person making money in our family. And so around that time, I had learned from Lee Miltier about the power of auto-suggestion. She talks about, how you'd say like, I have a successful business, or I completed a marathon, or whatever it is you're trying to accomplish. You say these things to yourself. And she told the story of this woman who walked away from Lee's workshop, realizing she'd been auto-suggesting to her husband that he always loses his temper, because that was her experience, right? So she decided to change it up. She goes home, she waits for him to lose his temper. She didn't have to wait very long. And then she says her new thing, the thing she came up with was, it's not like you to lose your temper. And he just kind of looks at her funny, like, what is going on? And the 12-year-old son says, yes, it is, Mom. He always loses his temper. That's what he was used to. And so, but she kept this up for a while. And because she felt like she had nothing to lose. And they were at a restaurant a little while later, and the service was pretty slow. And the husband was like starting to fume. He's like, you know what? I'm going to call the manager over here. I want to tell him how long we've been waiting, because this is ridiculous. And he stopped himself and he looks at her. He goes, you know what? It's not like me to lose my temper, is it? And she just nearly fell on the floor.
I love that story.
Right. And so I heard this from Lee Miltier, and I thought, I'm going to use this. So I decided to start saying to my husband, you've always been a good provider. You've always been a good provider. And then just for fun, I thought, I'm going to start calling him Mr. Moneybags too. So he'd like get a check in the mail. I go, hey, Mr. Moneybags, you can take me out for sushi now or whatever. So so around that time, my husband started his own business for the first time. And he was more successful in that business than he'd been at any of his previous jobs. And it just felt so easy. Like, it's true. He's such a good provider. Like that, my experience completely changed as I changed my words, and then also changed my focus, right? What you focus on increases.
Right.
And I started gathering evidence like, oh, he is a good provider. And oh my God, he's a good provider. So
I love that. So you have 6 intimacy skills that you outline in your book, The Empowered Wife. And I am kind of wondering, just as I found myself sort of struggling with one where I'm like, oh, this one's going to be particularly difficult for me. I can feel that I'm going to need to really lean into this. Do you find that one of these intimacy skills is more difficult for women to practice than others?
Well, speaking for myself, yes. Well, I think there's 2.
Wait, Laura, heck, when you said that just now, is there one that you're thinking of, like a specific one of the 6?
I already mentioned it's the respect one. I have trouble sort of.
Was I not listening? Did you already say that? Sorry. I missed it.
These two, like, just so you know, Laura, we are not married. We're not brother and sister.
We are married,
so
just not to each other.
Not to each other. That's so true. It seems like we're brother and sister because there's quite the relationship dynamic between the two.
I like, the antagonism. It's it's kind of fun. I can.
No, actually, cool. I'm glad that you said that, because I have a question about the respect one too. So let's go. Let's do it.
Yeah. Well, that was the one I struggle with, but I am wondering from Laura's perspective what she finds most women are really kind of having a tough time with.
Well, we could definitely say respect is a tough one to get started with, because I think, I just know for me, like I knew my opinion counted. I'm educated. I was feminine. I am a feminist, I guess. I don't know exactly what that means anymore, but yeah. And so I think there's this mindset that we're raised with that it's like actually of service to your husband to be like the devil's advocate when he says something, for you to go, well, have you thought about this? Or don't you think, you should consider this first? Or like, like my husband would say, hey, I don't know if I should take the car in now to get those brakes looked at, or maybe wait till next week. And I'd be like, they're brakes. Like, obviously you should do that now.
Right, obviously,
right. Dumbass. Exactly. Right. So there's just like, so I just had this kind of a superiority complex. Like I'm somehow smarter than my husband, and I just need to like show him how to make a resume and, how to load the dishwasher the right way. And
that is a necessity. I have learned that, right, Zach?
Yeah. So So we've got to do all these things to teach our husband. And what I didn't realize, I had no idea. And Zach, you can back me up on this or not, but helpful in wife language seems to be like critical and disrespectful in husband language. Would you agree?
Oh, I feel like he's frozen.
I think
he's frozen.
That's awful. Well, he's
Nice.
smiling, but I don't know if he agrees. I'm going to take that as he agrees. Okay, now he left entirely. So.
I know.
Yeah. So anyway, I'm sure he'll be back in a minute. Right?
Yes. Yeah.
So the thing that I thought was interesting is that this superiority complex actually made me into a porcupine wife, where my husband just didn't really want to be around me. Like I wasn't as fun to snuggle with or, and I wasn't laughing because I was like telling him what to do. Yeah. So it wasn't until, and I think if you would have asked me at the time, I'd be like, yeah, I am respectful, except for the way he dresses and the way he drives. And, right. I didn't really have a concept. I knew I should be respectful. Yeah. But I also thought of it as something, I thought respect is like something you give to authority figures, like parents, teachers, boss. You have to be. So it's like respect is like you suck it up and just be obedient kind of a thing. Mm-hmm. And gosh, it's been so eye-opening and so empowering to find out that's not what respect looks like for men. Respect for that. My husband is that I expect the best from him, right? That I'm not saying, oh, be careful, like his mom, like his smother mother, right? Or
smother mother.
Yeah. And, men are just not sexually attracted to their mothers. So when I was showing up that way, that was like another kind of a downer for the marriage. Yeah. Or another thing I can do to just be incredibly respectful. This is one of the cheat phrases. We have like 20 cheat phrases.
Please tell me.
Yeah.
Is it the what do you think?
This is no. I was going for another one. I mean, that's
I love that one too. Yeah.
The other one is like, just to like, if my husband wants to talk about work and he's like, just, talking about somebody at work or whatever. And I'm thinking, I think he's got the wrong attitude about that one or whatever, right? I don't have to weigh in. I could just be respectful by being a good listener, by using this phrase. And I'm like, if you're listening, write this down.
Yeah.
I hear you.
I hear you.
I hear you. And I didn't agree. I didn't disagree. Right. I didn't contradict. I didn't undermine. I'm just saying, I'm bearing witness. What you say is important to me. And he's my beloved. So it's his voice, his thoughts, his ideas, and he's sharing them with me. And that has led to the return of the deep conversations, right?
Yeah.
And, the playfulness, the laughter, the thinking about our future, making plans, having dreams.
Yeah, I hear you. I loved that. And I kind of sort of alluded to one of my favorite phrases. I was just looking in the book because I took a bunch of notes. And I think it's the question of, what do you think about that? Was that the question? Or
I think you might. So there's another cheap phrase that I used to kind of, because I had taught my husband that I thought he should check with me before he made any big decisions, like starting a business or getting a cell phone plan, or I don't know, getting dressed. Hey, Zach is back.
I came back. Yeah.
You froze in the most beautiful,
did. It's like you planned it. Yeah.
I know. It was just right there. Yeah. Okay. Go on, Laura.
Yeah. So I had trained him to like always check with me, before you get dressed or whatever. So to undo that training, I use that phrase, whatever you think.
Whatever you think.
Yeah,
that's what it was.
And, I had one of my students, Kathy Murray, tells this fantastic story about how they'd been sleeping in separate bedrooms for 6 months. She was on the brink of divorce in her second marriage. And she got a hold of the book and this phrase. And she thought, what I got to lose? Like my marriage is, in the ditch here. So I'm going to experiment with that. And her husband came in and said, hey, what should I do? We got to pick a new cell phone plan. What do you want me to do? And so she said, oh, whatever you think. And she was thinking, I hope he doesn't screw it up. Yeah. And he would look at her kind of funny, like, no, you got to tell me.
You have an opinion, I'm sure.
Yeah, like, I don't want to get in trouble later. So why don't you just tell me now what I'm supposed to do? And she goes, no, whatever you think. I trust you. She added, I trust you.
Wow.
So he goes off and takes care of the cell phone plan by himself. He does fine, right? She married a smart man. He's capable. He's competent. And that night, he came over to her and said, you were so nice today. And so like tears just ran down her cheeks, and they ended up sleeping in the same bed that very night. Yeah. And she still gets tears in her eyes to this day when she tells that story, because it was the beginning of her realizing like, oh, I have something to do with this breakdown in my marriage, and there's something I can change. And she just also talks about how tragic it would have been to divorce this guy who's the love of her life.
I love that. Gosh, I think that's probably another area that I definitely struggle in. So Zach and I are both Gottman trained certified therapists and teach for the Institute. And so there's this element that sort of goes into that, which is this element of yielding. And we find that yielding is this like lack of desire to say whatever you think. It's, I always have an opinion. It's my way or the highway. And so I'm finding that this is definitely a skill. And I think if men were to ever read this book, they would go, oh my gosh, I could do all the same things, and this would apply to my marriage, because I think ultimately it's really about taking responsibility for what you have control in your relationship. What do you have control in? That can impact how your partner is responding to you.
I mean, accountability is just huge, isn't it?
Yeah.
Like that is, and I feel like it's something we're not very well trained in. Like there was no relationships 101 at my school, and if there was at yours, right? And my parents are divorced. So I was following this failed recipe. And it was just such a relief to find out that having a great relationship, the kind that you dream about when you're a kid, is a matter of learning certain skills. It's not like, oh, you have to just be lucky. It has to be the right person that you're compatible with or whatever. It's like driving a car or making an omelet. Like if somebody shows you, it's so much easier to navigate. And that's true no matter how hopeless your relationship seems. There's just a few things that nobody ever showed you about how to make it magical again, how to make it playful and intimate and passionate.
Yeah. Well, we use this phrase at the end when we get to our time that I think it's time to land the plane. But I do want to give our listeners a way to reach out to you, learn more about you. This is not the only book you've written. You've written other books. So what's a good way for people to find you, well, I think we're going to have the book available on our website so people can find it. But what's a good way for people to reach out and learn more about you?
You know, I actually have something really fun going on right now, which is I made an Adored Wife roadmap that just sort of summarizes the steps, all the skills that you need. And it also talks about the 3 mistakes that just about everybody's making in trying to get their husband's time and attention and affection. And you can download that for free at lauradoyle.org. It's the Adored Wife roadmap at lauradoyle.org.
Yeah, I actually, when I was doing some research, I downloaded the roadmap to take a look at and read through. So that was very fun to get just, PDF right in my inbox, which is awesome. Thank you so much for all of your time in joining us and helping me filter through some of the things I was reading. Zach, any questions, comments, adios?
No, I'm sorry, I dropped out there for a second. I don't know what happened, but I'll look forward to hearing what I missed when I go back and listen to my own podcast.
Yeah, you can add your opinion because I totally asked it for it. Right?
You did. We'll have to do like a voiceover and insert Zach now.
No, I'll do it at the intro. Hey, at about minute 25, she says this, and this is what I think about that. You can wait.
That's a great cliffhanger. I love it.
So.
Yeah, draw your own conclusions. Well, thank you so much,
Thanks,
Laura, for joining us.
It's been my pleasure. Thanks so much for having me on.
Thanks so much for listening to this episode of Marriage Therapy Radio. Thank you to our guest, Laura Doyle, talking to us about her book, The Empowered Wife. And I also wanted to let you know that she has her own podcast. So if you're looking for more opportunities to grow your relationship or grow as a wife in your relationship, check out the Empowered Wife podcast with Laura Doyle. Thanks for all of your time and attention, making your relationship better today than it was yesterday.